Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. This week I wanted to do a video a little bit different, not so much focused on the plants themselves, more their containers. So let's get started. Alright, so I do a lot of thrifting for the containers that I use for the plants and planters. So I thought I would go into some detail about how I pick the ones that I pick and what I am looking for and why I don't pick certain ones. I don't really do a lot of cover pots. I usually either have it in the plastic pot, regular nursery pot, or I'll have it in a breakable container that I've turned into a planter by drilling a hole in the bottom. I don't really do a lot of cover pots like this. This was kind of just a happy accident, but I think it's working really well, and every once in a while I can admit that having a cover pot works out really nicely, because it is not fun moving all of the pots into a tray to water them. If you have everything that needs watered around the same time, then it can be quite an ordeal. But it feels like extra steps to get a nursery pot and then a cover pot, so I tend to just get the regular container and turn that into a planter, or I'll just leave it in the nursery pot. I mean, no one's really going to notice or care other than me, but you know, every once in a while I'll come across something that looks so cool as a planter that you just have to. But in this instance, I was hesitant to drill a hole in this because I was worried that it was going to just ruin it completely, ruin the container mostly, not the plant. The plant would be fine. But I decided to go ahead and do it because I didn't have a pot that was going to fit in here. It kind of curves in on the side there, so it made I didn't have any on hand. I mean, at the mouth, this size nursery pot would have been fine, but further down in the neck or waist, whatever you want to call it, of the container, it wouldn't have fit at all. It would have had to have been smaller, and smaller wouldn't have really worked for the plant, and it would have wobbled a lot. So in that instance, either not using it as a planter at all or drilling a hole in it works out better. And then in an instance like this, where leaving it as is can make it kind of top heavy, so you want something with a bit more heft and weight to it for it to sit in, and this doesn't really have that much. I mean, it has a little bit, but not gobs and bunches of wiggle room in there, so it can sit and absorb water if it needs to, or you know, just sit there and look cute, and if it gets a little bit wobbly, it's not going to fall over. It's not the end of the world. So I have here a few different containers, some with plants in them and some without plants in them. So I'm going to explain the ones that I have in. Alright, so this one, I'm not entirely sold on this pot. I don't hate it, but it's not my favorite, especially for this one. This was kind of a last minute thing. I will probably end up moving this out of this pot at some point. Just because I think it needs to be something that's not quite as viney. Since it has a wide base, but then it gets really tight at the neck. So that, I think, won't work as well long term for this type of plant. So I'm going to have to move it probably in the spring. I think it'll be fine for a while. But that's something that I have to worry about, because if it gets too small at the neck, then trying to repot it is either going to damage the plant a lot or it's going to mean breaking the container that it's in. So this is right on the verge of being too tight of a neck for how wide the base is. It's mostly fine. I'm probably overreacting, but also if you intend for it to stay in there for a long time, you don't want it to have a huge tight root ball and have to try and pull it out of a smaller opening. That's just in general. And this, it does have a wide, I haven't turned this into a planter yet, but I will. I even have a plant picked out. But this type of pot, it does have a lip on the inside. It does come in a bit at the opening, at the mouth, but it's not that much of a difference. And if it's going to be, most of the time when I repot them, they're not going to be super root bound in this size. And I think even if it was super root bound, you could just, it wouldn't damage it that much pulling it out of here if it was super root bound. So this size is fine. This size is on the verge, and I don't have any that are super tight. But if you're thinking like putting it in a teacup, I would not recommend a teacup. Or like a bottle. I would not let something grow in a bottle just because you have such a small opening and so much space for the roots to go that if you have to change the water out or repot it, you're probably going to have to break the container it's in. This is a good size. I like the idea of having plants in teacups or just mugs in general, but the problem is if you get them too small, then it's not going to be in there for a very long time or look big and beautiful. So you want something with a bit of a bigger size to it so it can have time to look nice in that container that it's supposed to be in. This one has straight sides, more or less straight sides. That one's a really good option for a planter. And this one has tall sides. It's not completely straight sides. It is more of a bowl than like a pot or whatever. So this one's also a really good option. It doesn't come in, it kind of spreads out a bit more at the top, so that makes it probably, depending on what you want to put in there, a better option than this one. But I wouldn't say that if you have this or this, don't get this. You could get both. I have this one I want to turn into a planter. I haven't decided what I want to put in it yet. This could go either way of being a planter or a candle. It's a bit on the deeper side than what I usually want for candle making, but I think I wouldn't want the color on the inside to get completely lost if it was a planter, so that's what's kind of holding me back from just drilling a hole in there to have it for a planter. It kind of, I don't know. This one I got because I thought it was really cool and I knew I could use it for one or the other. I just hadn't decided which yet. But usually when I'm thrifting containers, I like to have a plan or a vision for what's going to go in it. And some of them I didn't, some of them were gifts, and some of them the idea has changed. I got this one, this container, thrifting. I really, really liked the colors. I'm not sure if I will focus on it. I keep going back and forth. This one I really haven't decided, and right when I think, you know what, I'm going to use it for this, I change my mind. I'd love to use it for a planter, but at the same time, it is the diameter is a bit on the smaller side, but it has depth, so it wouldn't be too bad. It's not focusing on it. But at the same time, I kind of want to turn it into a candle because I love the reflecty mother of pearl almost sheen to it. But then it's a little too deep for a candle for what I normally do, so it keeps going back and forth. But yeah, this one is one of those that I got because it looked really neat, and I'll figure out later what I'm using it for. But for the most part, I like to have a plan for what I'm using it for if I'm buying it. I have... Alright, this here is an example of what I would not use as a planter. It has a good size. Width-wise, at the base it has a good size, but that opening is so much smaller, I would not use that as a planter. Just of that. Now, these are two pots that would be great planters. And this one, the rectangular one, I think that would look really neat as a planter. If you have, there are some plants that instead of trailing, they creep. Those would be a rectangle planter like that would be a really good option for those. That would give them space to creep along in one direction. But you could also just have trailing plants in there that hang out, like kind of like a mobile window box almost. And then these are some smaller ones. I don't love smaller containers for planters, even though some of them are super cute and will look really neat with a plant in there. I don't like that just on account of when it's smaller, it can grow in leaps and bounds, and you don't want to stunt its growth by keeping it in a smaller container. So unless it's something that you're willing to have a mini version of the plant, then I don't really recommend having a plant in a small container. This used to hold a candle, and I think that is another really great option if you have a candle that you really like the scent of and you've burnt it and it's time to throw the container away, but it's glass and it looks really nice. Then you can turn that into a planter either as a cover pot or as a planter itself. It's kind of just up to you. It's really tall. The opening is okay. It's a bit smaller than what I want. If I was going to put a plant in there, it would need to have more tap roots than spready roots. Is that even a word? I would not put something viney in there for sure. Just on account of their nodes will have lots of roots, and it will try and have lots of roots along the stem. So you want something that usually just has straight down. This one, oh my goodness, this one is so cute. It's small. The only thing that I would put in a container like this is probably like a string of things or something viney. There's like turtle vine, there's the string of hearts, string of pearls, string of turtles. I think there's another one. Something like that, something more delicate, finer roots is what I would put in there. I would not put like a Hoya or a pothos in something like that. It is more delicate, and I don't like small containers holding something that should be bigger. I know that can be argued that pothos get really big, so why are you keeping them in a small container? But that's just a little bit different. That's like really small. And this one would be a really great container for, it's like that medium size where you could go either way. I would probably prefer to use that size for like a candle versus a planter. I do love gravy boats. Gravy boats are so cute as a planter. You could get something like a Hoya, or you could do like a dual plant where you have something that's slightly more bushy and something that kind of creeps or trails, and have that pour out the spout. I just think that those are the coolest and look super cute. Alright, I don't have any, but I would like to get some at some point. Some carnivorous plants. They're called pinglings, I think. They look like a succulent, but they're a carnivorous plant. I think a shallow dish like that, I would not use it for most things, maybe some string of things, but, and I don't even, you maybe could use it for a fern, but you'd have to be careful on what type of fern. You couldn't just grab a random fern and a more shallow container like that. I don't know if I'd put a Hoya in there either, but yeah, I think that size container that it would work great for a carnivorous plant like that. I don't think a pitcher plant or a Venus flytrap would work well in there, mostly just like the pinglings and smaller rooted things. Succulents would probably do fairly well in there, but something with shallow roots. I keep throwing out string of things, like just all the different strings of things, but those are really good if you don't have a lot of root space for them. I think that those are a really good option. Teapots. I have seen so many teapots used as planters before over the years. And mostly I see it as a failed plant hack because they're trying to pull their plant out of there and they have to break the teapot, and the plant is in the shape of the teapot because it is so root bound you can't get it out. It looks really neat, but you can't, that is kind of the end, that is the end of that teapot. It doesn't have a second life after that. Pitchers, you can go either way. I have done a couple of pitchers. Pitchers are kind of weird. Those are use at your own risk for a plant. It looks really neat, but you either have to do maintenance on it fairly often to keep the roots down, or you just have to plan on never being able to use that pitcher again for anything else ever. On account of most pitchers having a tighter neck and then a wide spout. So if you really, really like the pitcher, if it's like an heirloom, I wouldn't recommend using it for a planter. Or even a candle, just because it's wide and then it pinches and then it gets wide again. I wouldn't, that is kind of just, it has one job. You don't really want to use it for anything else. But yeah, that is, pitchers are neat, but you really have to be careful with what you're doing. And this is another dish. It is really wide, but it also has a really small bottom that another shallow rooted something. If you have like philodendrons or monsteras, I don't think I would use something shallow for that. I did have something shallow that I had my monstera in before, and when it needed staked up, the stake was falling out with the plant, so I don't recommend it if you intend to keep it in there for a while. Hoyas might be fine in something like this. I don't know enough about a Hoya's root system to say something shallow like this would be fine. I do know that they have nodes on them frequently. So they are more along the lines of a viney something, but I think they're in their own category. Again, I don't know enough about Hoyas to have an expert opinion on them. I don't know. I would keep my eye on it if I put a Hoya in there. Something like this, I love how deep that is, and it gets wide at the top. That one is kind of a universal size. You could put almost anything in there, I think, and it would probably be pretty happy. The only thing, okay, if it's something deep, I wouldn't put something shallow rooted in there because you have so much soil for it to hold on to moisture or other things to grow and develop that you don't want bothering your plants. So you kind of need to pair your pot with your plant. And if you don't know, I would just get a nursery pot until you understand your plant's root system better. And this pot, bowl, sorry, still a bowl, This one's also kind of a universal one. It is more shallow than the one before, but not as shallow as the first one in this clip. So that one, I wouldn't quite say that that is a universal good pot, but if you wanted to have something like a fern and something traily in there, I think that would be a good combo planter. But alright, I have a few mugs here that I want to show you. Mugs are really hard to find a good size for a planter, just on account of most of them being small enough that it wouldn't last long as a planter, so I don't even really see the point. A lot of them are the same size or a little bit smaller than most nursery pot, than the most used size nursery pot, but this one is a pretty good size. You want it to be about the size of a nursery pot or a little bit bigger. This one is neat. I think that's a little bit bigger than a nursery pot. It's deeper. I think this one would be fine. It does kind of come in at the top, but I think as a planter that would be okay. But again, you wouldn't want to put something in there that needs more traily space and has a lot of nodes. So you'd want something that kind of, maybe like a fern or some philodendrons, not all philodendrons, maybe a begonia, something along those lines I think would work well in here. But yeah, those are just a couple, and you notice I didn't have any glass on there. As a general rule, I don't like using glass for them, just because roots tend to be in the soil, so they are more sensitive to sunlight hitting them. So if your plant needs brighter light and you're putting it in something glass where its roots are going to be close to the edge, where it's going to be in the sunlight, you're going to damage the roots in an unusual way. So for the most part, I don't like using glass for planters, except in some occasions for traily things, because they look super cute in glasses like this. You could also have like a dark green glass or a blue glass or a brown glass, but but if you see a clear glass container, if you really wanted to use it for a planter, I would be aware and probably use a cover pot or have some sort of plan to keep the soil in the dark. That is going to do it for this week's video. Like the video if you like the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.